What's up? How's it going? Good afternoon. Hope you had a great Sunday. I am coming to you from my office here at my house, and I am sorry, but my voice is completely shot. We had a student lock-in. We went from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Friday night for 6th through 12th graders. It was a part of our ministry at our church, and man, we had a great time. As we talk today on this passage, how I wish Jesus and his disciples were just walking around Las Vegas so that they could come to my house and heal my sickness, because I am feeling it. So, with that being said, we are talking today about Matthew 8:14 through 17. And I really think that this verse, as we've been walking through this understanding of the Gospels, number one, but also this understanding of who Jesus really is and what his identity is as he begins his ministry, as he's following through with what he has been called to be completely for us and for those guys in that time. I think this verse sums up a lot of Jesus' characteristics as not only a man, but as God himself. And so I'm just going to read it off to start us off. Verse 14, and then when Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. I'm going to stop there. I'm reading out of the ESV. It's what we use at our school. It's what we use just at our church when we do our studies as well. And I think it's a great way to kind of see some clarity through the verse. And when Jesus entered Peter's house, we see that Jesus himself is in ministry. He's in ministry to what we've even seen and talked about in classes, this fulfillment. Jesus entering Peter's house shows that Peter was a real man as well, in that his discipleship with Jesus and his life as a follower of Jesus was a lifestyle, not just a kind of story. And so when he saw his mother-in-law lying sick, and I read commentaries about this, and I heard there's a little bit of a touchy subject on this with Peter just getting married recently and all this kind of going on. That's a side note. But he touched her hand, and the fever left her. Man, what a powerful statement. He touched her hand, and the fever left her. You see, Jesus is who he says he is. He is the authority. And my first point as we walk through our talk today is that Jesus has authority. Not only does Jesus have authority in our life and his role and his position next to God, God being his Father, but he has authority in even casting sickness and disease out of people. Man, what a testimony to his ministry and his work. And you notice as he did so, immediately she rose and began to serve him. I personally, as a side note, if my sickness out of the blink of an eye being touched by some man's hand, me too, especially being not only in that time, but in even today's time, if my doctor were to come into the hospital if I was sick, which I have a frequent flyers card too, so if you need to borrow it, I'll let you borrow it. But if I'm sitting in the hospital bed and this dude just walks in with all of his homies and touches my hand, my mind would be blown at the idea that this man has just touched the sickness out of me. I too would begin to get up and to serve this person, whoever it is. And it's powerful to see that it's Jesus himself. And Jesus himself walks in, and just to be touched by Jesus, what an honor. What a calling on your life of servitude after that. And we notice here that this illness, that this sickness that she had was real. In Mark and in Luke, it talked about just this idea that they were conversing of a way to get her better or her symptoms and more talks about this conversation going on of this what are we going to do mentality. So it wasn't that she was possessed. It wasn't that she was facing immortality or going in towards, moral sins, but that she herself was just physically and mentally exhausted and physically ill from a sickness. And it's just powerful to me to see that Jesus' authority in that, being the right hand of God. Man, what a powerful way. And so we follow through and we notice that it continues to say that evening they brought to him, the disciples, many more who were oppressed by demons. And he cast out the spirits with the word and healed all who were sick. I'm going to stop there before we get into verse 17, which takes a little turn for us. But it's this idea of Jesus is who he is. I think it's powerful when I speak to my students. And I just got this Google update that just popped up. My ADD is tripping. It's this identity of who Jesus is. Jesus is here to fulfill what he was told by the Father to do. Jesus is here to heal, to serve, to wash feet, and to eventually go to the cross and die. And we notice in all the Gospels that this continual precision and this continual pursuit of what the Lord has planned for Jesus is a constant attitude of his, that he wants to be about his Father's business. And it's crazy to me that even to the minute details in this scripture, that he's still actively pursuing what he has planned, what God is doing in his life. They brought to him many who were oppressed. This verse, I think, is helpful for us to understand not only his fulfillment and his role, but the distinction. That sickness was not because we were possessed by demons or because you were living unrighteous lives. I still hear it today. It was crazy. We took a trip to Africa, and I got to hear the stories of people there who still believe in the witch doctors, and they go and they cast these demons, and they pray to these different deities and these different things about, because of my unclean lifestyle, I'm unable to have children, or because of my unclean lifestyle, I'm faced with cancer or AIDS, or, it's just shame because you lived unclean. And Jesus kind of nails it down pretty tightly here when he talks about this in verse 16, that demons and the sick, it wasn't all in one, it wasn't all inclusive. That Jesus was just there to do a ministry and to fulfill his ministry. He is who he says he is. You see, Jesus doesn't stray away from that. Verse 17, and I'm gonna close this out with this and this idea, because I think it's just so important to us, not only as students in college right now, but I know in my ministry, being a youth pastor for our students, this work that Jesus does, and his importance and his value and his worth in our lives. I think nowadays we take Instagram and modern day medicine and self-help fixes and these quick to I could Google anything now and find the answer and be right. But Jesus does it in a way where the answer is clear as day, but he makes you do some digging. He makes you look into the chapters of what God, his Father, has set up for Israel, and what God, his Father, has promised to bring and promised to protect and promised to give and deliver and to restore the relationship. We talked in our staff meeting this last week about this idea of, we talk about it so much, but what is the will of God? What is it? And it's this idea that God originally created humans to be in a relationship with him, restored fully and completely, without brokenness, without any type of fall. And yet, because he loves us and has given us free will, we've turned and made it into something destructive. And so I think that this part in Jesus' ministry in the 3 and short years that he is on this earth with us, it's his purpose, it's his fulfillment to restore that relationship yet again. And as a Christ follower, as a believer, as somebody who says, you know what, I know what Jesus has done for me is valuable. I know it's to restore the relationship and to give me the Spirit so that I may be guided down a righteous path, not by my works, but by my faith. This verse allows us to do some digging, some soul searching into what God had planned. And it's verse 17. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. Man, what a concept. What an idea. For me personally, I have a disease. I have cystic fibrosis. And to hear a verse like this brings so much weight and so much value to my life, knowing that though it sucks that I have this, Jesus bears it. On the cross, he's holding it up for me. He's going to use it in a way that is going to bless others and bless his name in the long run. And for many others out there that have illnesses and diseases and struggles and fears and all these insecurities right now that we're going through, to understand and to know that about God's business is fulfilling what God is meant to do through Jesus. Restoring, healing, casting out demons, casting out the fears. We conquered death with dying with him on his cross. We no longer have to feel ashamed of what we've done, but we know that every single piece of this puzzle is going to be put together and righteousness is going to be restored because Jesus is bearing our sins, bearing our illnesses. He's bore our diseases. Even with his mother-in-law, Peter's mother-in-law, we witness as Jesus jumps to the opportunity to heal. He doesn't question her. He doesn't ask, well, what did you do? He didn't ask, oh, well, you need me, huh? He doesn't have this cocky leader, twisted mentality where if I do this for you, you got to do something for me. He simply shows up. He's simply there. And he lays his hand on her and heals her. Man, what a powerful testimony of who Jesus is. Throughout this class and throughout this lesson, and personally for me, throughout this fulfillment message, is just this idea that I can rest assured that Jesus is who he says he is, and that Jesus is going to fulfill it all. He's going to fulfill everything is promised, from the simplest of touching of her hand to healing, to the largest mountain moved, death conquered, my insecurities lifted, a relationship restored because of him. Because he is who he says he is. And because he has authority to do all things. That's my conclusion. That's my story. It's a little weird not doing it. I'm used to doing it in front of students. It's weird to do it in front of a camera. Usually they have one in the back of the room where I don't see it and I don't have to listen to myself or view it. It just pops up on the website. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope this helps me out with my ending of this class. I'm so excited for what all that God's doing in our life over here in Vegas, and I hope he's doing a work in you guys as well. And thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing more as we finish into our last week of this class.